Stop motion it's a little bit different. Like you're tracking an object in dimensional space, and it takes some getting used to.
It can be described as the art of taking an object that exists in real space and adjusting it one frame at a time to create the illusion of movement. I love it. It's what I live for.
I was doing my master's in Savannah, and I basically just happened to get hired at Will Vinton. I had 2 job offers at one point. One offer was to go work on the Gary and Mike show, which was produced at Will Vinton, which was a stop motion show. And the other offer was to go paint backgrounds for King of the Hill. I chose to go to Will Vinton, and the rest is kind of history, I guess. I did a piece, you know, and that got their attention. It was a really crappy piece, you know, it was terrible. Based on that, they kind of flew me out for a couple days to do some testing with their puppets. That led into other jobs in stop motion, and that ended up being my specialty, but I never really, I don't know, I never really planned it. It just kind of happened, you know, like life just kind of happens, I guess, kind of thing. I'm teach animation at Edinboro right now. At some point I just went back to finish my master's, and I wanted to try out teaching, and I ended up getting a job in Detroit teaching, and I taught there for a couple years, and then I got hired here. This is my 3rd year here, so it's my 5th year teaching.
It's kind of funny, the drama that goes on around here sometimes.
I worked on a film, which this is kind of loosely based on, so that's kind of where the story came from.
We're doing an animated version of the children's book, Rod and Randy, written by the school's president.
I watched a film called Lost in La Mancha. Everything that can go wrong does. That was kind of the seed of the idea, like I should make an animated film about the making of an animated film and have the whole production just be a complete disaster. And then there were little bits, little elements here and there, you know, sort of the Spinal Tap element to it as well. I guess the last piece was like basically Final Destination, like having characters die in gruesome accidents.
We need to get him to the hospital now.
Was sort of inspired by that, because I'm a big fan of horror films too, you know, so it kind of ended up being this hybrid of mockumentary, but also like black comedy and a little bit of horror as well, which I've always been a big fan of.
The best Alien sequel was Alien Resurrection.
I came up with the idea like in the summer of '04. I basically put all the pieces together and thought that, you know, the project that I worked on in Savannah would be like the sort of the basis of the whole thing, you know, with all these other elements thrown in. And it's also a big spoof on academic politics.
The funniest part is the president puts her daughter's husband, who has no production experience, in charge of the thing.
It wasn't my intention to come off like I had hard feelings toward anybody, but I, you know, have been burned by academic politics in the past, so I thought it was kind of a funny spoof to kind of just take a little jab at that whole system. But it's more just in fun.
Where can I score some of that crack you've been smoking?
Brad, you are so funny.
In the summer of '04, I started designing the characters, and I had all the character designs basically done when I moved here. You know, I had like a really rough outline of what I wanted to happen, and then I basically spent a year doing storyboards. I did something like 1,000 storyboard drawings, somewhere in that neighborhood. When I went to make a copy, I ended up like using a ream of paper, but a lot of that ended up getting cut, you know, because I just couldn't do it all. In the summer, like right near the end of the 04-05 school year, I was basically drawing storyboards, and then at the end of that year we did all the voice reads, and then I probably spent a month cutting together the first version of the animatic. So several brutal edits later, now it's down to 17, and I'm actually still looking for places where I can cut it, but we'll see, you know, I don't know. I spent probably a year just building stuff, sculpting things, making the puppets, sculpting the little replacement pieces. So it's been almost a year now that I've actually been filming, like animating on it. And I'm about half done at this point. It's a labor of love, or something like that. The main thing that's based on true events is that characters kind of look like people that worked on this project. The director was somebody's son-in-law, and basically that's why he was the director. He didn't really have a lot of experience, so it didn't go that smoothly. There's a character, Brad, who's basically me, who's the animator, and then just kind of this whole gang of people that are working on this film, and you have all these sort of archetypal characters, you know, you have like the film guy, and you have like a couple of like the goth kids. They're working on this film, and it starts off, everybody's all excited about, and then basically people start dying like in weird accidents, and the thing kind of plods on in spite of itself. The building blows up, one guy gets deported, and then one character ends up in jail, and a bunch of people end up dead, and the Brad character ends up in a padded cell. And that's basically the end. Again, the inspiration kind of being like Lost in La Mancha, you know, like just everything that can go wrong goes wrong, you know. They start off with all the right intentions, you know, and there's some situations that kind of were inspired by situations, you know. Specifically like conversations at the beginning when they're arguing about movies.
The Ralph Bakshi version was much better.
That's going too far.
Of course, nobody really died. After the first death, like everything after that's pretty much made up. There's people like who might be kind of pissed off at me because the characters are very similar.
It turns out filmmakers can be pretty opinionated about movies.
This is an O-scale train car that has a camera mount attached to it. This is basically my dolly rig. And just like goes to show you just exactly how low-tech this kind of animation is. It's really kitchen sink. I've coined a phrase, seat of the pants-imation, which is what I use to describe the process, and then I just sort of, you know, stick it on a railroad track and put the camera on it, and then just push a little bit every frame and animate the puppet, and then click off a frame, then animate the puppet, click off a frame. And I'll probably end up building something a little bit more high-tech than that, you know, when I get to several shots coming up where the dollies actually have to be somewhat smooth.
For camera dolly shots, we use the motion control rig. It's a 3-ton camera crane that can be pre-programmed to perform complex camera moves, one frame at a time. The
hardest shot was this shot where there's just a bunch of characters. It's like every character sitting there watching the TV. It was like a 90-frame shot, and nobody's really doing anything, and they had to look alive. And those are actually the hardest shots. There's definitely a teaching opportunity. I would think that the students who helped on it, you know, got something out of it.
I'm learning a lot from him. He may be a psychopath, but at least he knows what he's doing.
It's been a challenge, but it's also been a great experience in some ways too, you know. I have worked with some people on it to some extent, and that was good. This project's older than my son, which is ridiculous. And he's not getting any younger, and neither am I. So, like, I can't even watch it objectively anymore. Like, I don't even know if it's funny. I don't know what it was supposed to be. When I show it to people and they react well, then I usually take that as a good sign that it's funny, and hopefully it's a good film. I don't know.